One last one here at the end and we're in business. Right, well I'll review what screws I've got left here because I need 2 chrome plated screws like that for the top cover. There's one of them. There's the other one. So I haven't made a mess of that yet. That's looking good. I could put the leatherette on the base of the camera now, or I could wait until I'm finished. Probably easier to wait till I'm finished. This boss in the middle here looks a bit grimy. I'll see if I can clean that a bit better. People often mistake that for a tripod socket and then make a real mess of it when they try to screw something in there. But it ain't. Oh, there's a lot of embedded dirt there. We'll have that out. Want that to look nice and clean. People might look under there. I think I've done a half-baked job if I don't get all that clean. That's better. Much more acceptable. Right. I need to service the rangefinder and put that back on the top of the camera. Well, looking at this, most of the filth is on the back here, at that eyepiece lens, and on the outer surface. There's very little on the front by comparison. And here we have the semi-silvered mirror. Now this surface is plain glass. I can clean that with a cotton bud, no problem at all. The other side of it, the rear surface, that's semi-silvered. The silvering will just go away if you overdo it in the ultrasonic cleaner. It'll certainly go away if you start poking at it with cotton buds and glass cleaner. So if I was doing a very conservative job of cleaning that rangefinder, I would start with that rear eyepiece and I'll just report back subjectively how much of an improvement it makes. Well, looking through it, it looks fairly hazy. It's a very cloudy day here today. When it's a low contrast situation like that, you don't notice problems with the finder that you would see on a bright sunny day. If you have a bright sunny day, you may well find that the bright light will reflect nicely off all the hazy surfaces in your finder. Let me have a quick look after cleaning that rear glass. Yeah, well, that's certainly improved it to quite a large extent. This front surface isn't particularly dirty, but it's easy to get at. And again, it's glass and it's not vulnerable to damage. It's a prime thing to clean. So I'll just clean that and look out the window again. And this is a much nicer finder to look through than it was before. And I've really done nothing particularly exciting except clean the 2 outermost surfaces that are easy to get to, and they're surfaces that are not easily damaged. I can see that I've got dust on the inside surface of this glass. Well, I can get to that from here, so I can clean in there without too much trouble. I'll try that. Well, that's starting to look nice and sparkly now. What's it like to see through? Well, it's hard to say whether it's any better or not. And the only other sort of non-controversial surface I can get to here is this front surface of that semi-silvered mirror, because that's plain glass. So I'll just clean that. And that will be the dirtiest side of that semi-silvered mirror, because it's the one that's most open to the atmosphere. So even if that mirror is not particularly wonderful, probably 3/4 of the dirt will be on that easily cleaned side. I'm going to look out the window now. Well, yeah, well that's greatly improved. Now, there wouldn't be any pressing need to clean anything else in this finder. That has improved it markedly. I'm going to take it apart and service it because I think that it's a bit gummy here. I don't think it follows the action as promptly as I'd like, and I want to do a really thorough job of cleaning it. But if it was my own camera and I wasn't feeling so brave, this would be as far as I would need to have gone. I haven't had to unscrew anything on here. It's all been fairly straightforward. If I wanted to clean one more surface that wasn't particularly dangerous, remove this screw, remove the rear glass here, and clean the inside of the rear eyepiece. The only surfaces here you don't really want to touch are this one, the front surface mirror here, and this, the rear surface of this semi-silvered mirror. Before I'm going to strip this down, when I do strip it down, I'll clean the body of it in the ultrasonic cleaner. I'll be cleaning the semi-silvered mirror and the front surface mirror. Everything else will be pretty much out of it. Certainly everything that's vulnerable to damage. Alright, well, seeing as I'm stripping this down, I'll remove this. This is a spanner for removing pin screws like that. Having loosened that, I can use the tweezers to unscrew that. Screw and a wavy washer, swing that up out of the way. The eyepiece glass I want out here, out of this. Now that's pretty much flat on the rear surface. It's convex on the inside surface. Yeah, that's pretty grimy just there. That would certainly benefit from a cleaning. Because I'm doing this in the ultrasonic cleaner, I'm going to remove this piece. Excuse me. Well, I've lost the track of that one, but let's get this screw out. This is the frame lines. This is the little pellicule, if you like, the pellicule that gives you your frame lines. A couple of washers there. There's shims. Now that black washer, that would have been under the screw head. That silver washer there, that would have been a shim underneath this piece here. Now this you most certainly do not put through the ultrasonic cleaner if you're cleaning it that way. This is like a piece of film. Now I know if this gets wet, if it's cleaned in an inappropriate way, that gelatin layer breaks up basically and you end up losing your frame lines. What can happen is that you end up with fractures in the gelatin, and then you end up with clear spots. Well, those clear spots will all look as like bright lines in your finder. So if you've got lots and lots of extra bright lines, it's because that gelatin layer is breaking up. But you can paint those out. Anywhere you've got a bright line that you don't want, you can get the end of a needle or the end of a sharpened toothpick, pick up a dot of black paint, just dot it on that piece that you don't want, and you won't have that bright line showing up. I've used that in the past where people want the other frame lines knocked out of their finder, where they have no intention of using the wide angle or the telephoto lens to knock those frame lines out, just so that they're not there as a distraction in their finder. It's a one-way process. If you do paint them over, the chance of you getting that paint off afterwards without damage is very minimal. Okay, so here I've got my rangefinder stripped down as far as I need to take it. Basically, I've only got those two components in there and this plastic condenser business in here. That I'll clean in the ultrasonic cleaner, and what I do is I put that in a little glass with some hot water and a drop of normal domestic dish soap, and then suspend the glass in the ultrasonic cleaner. Usually I'll give it 3 minutes, pull it out, rinse it under the hot tap, blow away all the water, dry it with a hair dryer, being careful to use the blower at the same time so you don't end up with any droplets drying on a surface. Keep blowing away any droplets that you see, otherwise you end up with coffee rings. And then check it. Most times that's all that's required. Sometimes it's worth processing it a second time, because in the cleaning process there have been oil or grease or somewhere on the body of the rangefinder, and that is suspended in the water and settled on the surfaces, and you end up with haze. But generally speaking, once is enough. Okay, well, I've got this back, I've cleaned it. Start putting this back together. I've cleaned the glass for the eyepiece lens. I can see a few specks on there. I'll just see if I can wipe those off. It's the problem when you clean anything made of glass. As soon as you put it down, it's no longer clean. It's helpfully flipped over. It's going from bad to worse. Right, that looks okay. Put this in place. And I'll have a peer out the window and see what I see. Yeah, that looks good. So, the frame lines, that can go back in. And I had a shiny metal shim underneath that. Then a very fine black washer and the screw that held that in place. Alright, so I should see the frame lines now if I look out through the finder. Yeah, they're all present and correct, and there's no extras, which is good. Pop that to one side. Here's the front lens. I'm going to give this a wipe with molybdenum paste through the centre and a very light wipe on that surface. I have the brass bush from that sitting here, and I've marked that with a little scratch mark before I took it apart so I can get it back in exactly the same position. Now my return spring runs in a tiny groove up the side of this arm, so I'm just giving that a wipe of molybdenum paste and get this ready to assemble. I've got the wavy washer and the screw. And the wavy washer, I'm just giving that a wipe with molybdenum paste. And I'm ready to go. So if I hook that spring into place, get the arm across where it needs to be, put my wavy washer in place, fit the screw, run that down, check that the arm moves freely, and it does. Tighten that up. Alright, and now I can look out the window and see what I get. Well, it looks good. It certainly goes back beyond the images, go back beyond the infinity point, so I'm just going to adjust that stop. There's a little stop right here. I'm going to screw that in slightly so that the finder never goes back past the point where the images would meet at infinity. These adjustments are usually pretty subtle. A little bit more. You can consider that the rest position, where images of an infinity target would be aligned. That looks very good. So that can go on the camera body now. Where's the camera body? Here it is. There are two screws. Now I'm just going to unhook my rubber band and hook that round over the body itself. If I look like I'm somewhat paranoid about that shutter release falling out, you'd be dead right. I'm going to put a couple of spots of lacquer on the base of the rangefinder so that when it's screwed down in place, there's a tendency to stay where it was put if the camera gets dropped. Let's see if I can get this in position. And there are two screws. You can drop them in from the top or in this case I can get one dropped in from there without too much trouble. Get that screw started. That's better, that's in. And its mate I do have to drop in from the top. Bit of luck, it's dropped straight into place. Without a bit of luck, the flaming thing's turned over upside down and I've got to have to start again. No, we're going to go. Yep, okay. So I'm holding the rangefinder back hard against towards the back of the camera, against the stop there. Get those two screws done up tight. And now I can check my alignment. I'm looking out the window at my infinity target and turning the shutter, the focus ring, and it comes back to the infinity. The images meet before I get back to the infinity point, so I need to make my adjustments. Now this is the lock screw, this one towards the back. I'll slacken that. And this one here makes my adjustments, and I need to rotate that slightly clockwise. Now the adjustments are pretty subtle, so it's easy to overdo it, and I certainly did there. My lock screw, I'm just going to put a bit of tighten that slightly. Things are moving a bit freely. It is somewhat easier to adjust the rangefinder on a 3 big C than it is on a 3 small C. Loud click sound you hear every now and then is me putting my visor back down so I can see what I'm doing. That's just about right there, so I'm just going to lock that and then check to make sure it hasn't moved. Yeah, it moved slightly. Taking that screw off again, that lock screw, and I'll get that adjusted. Well, that rangefinder is absolutely fine there, that's great. So that's a good result, and I'm ready to see about dealing with that exposure meter, which has got problems. While I'm here, I'm just going to put a dot of lacquer on that screw to make sure it doesn't wander loose, because that'll be covered by the meter once I put that back. Okay, so this I'll put the body aside. I need to look at this exposure meter. Now this has problems, the needle sticks. So there might be some dust in there, that's the most likely cause. I mean, it's all pretty grubby. So I want to take this ring off the top anyway. The follower needle sticks too, that whole top's not in a good state. So I want to remove that circlip first so I can get this wheel off. Where's the rule? Just use this. Right, press back against that. Flick that circlip off. Lift that wheel off there. That's that little cam. That's very dirty and nasty under there. It's not particularly greasy. It's more dusty. 2 screws hold the top cover on here. It's locked with a little touch of lacquer. That doesn't particularly look like anyone's ever been in here. Back those screws out a bit, see if I can lift that off. I can. Put that to one side. Let me have a look at my meter. Yeah, it's sticking. See, it's just sticking. That's not reacting to light. So there's, yeah, it looks like there's crap on the armature in there. Little fragments of something that's stopping that from moving. So these are all somewhat delicate, but I'll have to have a look and see if I can get rid of the foreign bodies causing me grief. Hold that across. Oh, there's definitely something there. Yeah, often they're just little particles of something ferrous, steel screws or something, and of course they're attracted to the magnet, and they foul up the movement. See, that should run back round to its stop position here, but it doesn't. Alright, well, I'll have to inspect that more closely. I've got to find a jeweler's eyeglass to do that. I'll have to remove this cover from the base so I can see up in there and see what's happening. I can't see down into that space particularly well. If I get that cover off, I should be able to see things a bit more clearly. That's better. Right. Now I've got a clear view through there and I can see what is happening. Well, I've spent a lot of time peering closely at this, and from what I can tell, the upper pivot is broken. On the inside of the coil there that you see on the meter, there's a tiny needle top and bottom. They're the pivot points, and they drop into little tiny recesses or cups on the armature, on the shaft, which you can adjust up and down to. But what's happening, I think, is that the top needle's gone. It's snapped off, so that the cup, when the cup rises up, it's not lifting against the point of a sharp needle. It's just hitting the body of the the coil there. So this will work quite reliably upside down, where it's just hanging on the bottom pivot, and there's enough clearance there for it to work. That just works exactly as you would expect. It swings right through the arc of movement. But when it's up the other way, the right way up, it won't work, and that's because the coil at that point is sitting down on top of the piece that it should be free of. So the meter, unfortunately, even though it reacts to light, it's buggered. It will never be any good. There's no way I can take that apart and reinstate that missing needle, that pivot. That's gone. And how did it die? Well, almost certainly it died by the camera being dropped. there's certainly enough damage points around that camera for that to have been the case. And basically it's like the main staff in a watch. Basically it's the staff in the watch, the pivot points are fairly fragile. It gets a good shock from the side and they just go, they snap off. And I think that's what's happened here. So this meter unfortunately is dead. I will have to speak to the owner and see if they want me to do anything about that. Probably not, because trying to find a selenium celled meter for a camera 60 years old that works correctly at this late stage is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Well, I think this unhappy exposure meter can be put back on the camera for the moment. Unfortunately it's never going to fly, but that's just life. Now the what do I need to put on here? This one, the film release button needs to go on.